We've got Richard and we've got Matthew now joining. Awesome. We got a small group today, which is great because then we can make it a little bit more interactive than just one way. If I am right, you did get a copy of the digital book, which is the AI Readiness book. If that's the case, just put in the chat if you've got that book.
I didn't. This looks like there's, how many of us are there on this meeting today?
We've got 3 guests and myself, so we're in 4 people.
Okay, I didn't download the book yet. I'm too busy. I just thought I'd learn something here and then I'll get to the book thing later.
Awesome. Now, that was my assumption. It's quite a heavy thing. Matthew downloaded the book. That's great. So this is going to take about 40 minutes, depending on questions. Let me just walk you through. I've been doing AI for about 2.5 years now. And there are a couple of things that I've noticed with implementing AI for i.t.NOW and other companies. So I thought if I want to put that learning and share that with others, let's do that in the book and in a training so that we can get people off to the races when it comes to AI. Here you go. At the process, you probably were asked, hey, look at this checklist, 20 critical questions to see, hey, how ready am I? If you've done that, great. You probably got a score and you understand, okay, there's work for me to do or not. But in this 40-minute webinar, I'll walk you through to the steps that I found retroactively would be the best steps to take if you want to get AI ready. The questions, I've not done the readiness survey. That's okay. When we go through this, you'll have a feel for how ready you are, Matthew. So make sure you put the question in the chat if you got any, and then I'll have a look at the chat window while we go here. Okay. You are probably tired of hearing about AI and still feel, am I falling behind? What are my competitors doing? How do I start, right? If that is you, just type me in the chat if you'd like. Okay. I'll get the book link marked later. Could have been in spam. So Richie says, that's about me. I did some research, not only for the book, but also for this training. And I looked at reports from organizations like McKinsey and see what they are saying, looking at what Microsoft is saying. And what they've said is that if you really put AI up on the front, and if you're like an AI leader, then what we see is that you get a 2 to 6 times extra total shareholder return. Okay, that's great. So if I lead with AI and I do more of that, what do I get? Bottom line, about 10 to 20% EBIT return. And this was in 2005. This is a report in 2005. So probably this is a lot different right now and a lot higher. At the same time, what I see in reports, and you probably see that in the news as well, is that anyone that's trying to set up an AI project, at least 80% plus fails. And I was thinking, okay, if I lead with AI and these enterprises are making money, at least that's what they say, but most projects that you and I start don't really show the bottom line impact. What's going on? What's wrong? Right? So that was my main question. Okay, you can get good returns, but why are we, if we start these projects, not seeing the direct returns ourselves? So I was diving a little bit deeper into the reasons why and compare that with my own experience and the reports that I've read. So what we see overall is that if you look really at utilization rates, and this could be across several areas in AI, and you can see this on this slide, is that most of us are using AI for text. Some of us are using it for images. But when we go to computer code, video, voice and music, and other type of usage, we see that it's declining. So we're not using all that AI and generative AI that it has to offer. But not only that, main companies like ChatGPT, Google, Microsoft, they're implementing AI in their applications. And there's where we see the same thing. If you ask yourself, how much am I actually using AI functionality in my Microsoft applications? how much utilization do you think you currently have? If you could just give me like a percentage, like a ballpark. Mark says 0 at the moment. So that's really low. What we found out is that it wasn't really 0 like Richard and Mark, but at least like up to 20%. So I have to rewrite the email sometimes. Yeah, I get it. So there's certain reasons why you're not using AI and the promise that it's projected to have, right? So most of the companies that are already paying for the ability for Copilot in Microsoft 365 aren't really using it. So it's less than 20% that actually are using it. So you guys were in the ballpark. 0 is less than 20%. So it's like having a sports car and driving it to the grocery store, right? Why don't we take it on a tour, right? Why don't we use all of the potential in Microsoft 365 or Anthropic, Claude, Google, etc.? Why is that? If you could give me some reasons why you're not using it at the moment. One is what Mark says, I have to rewrite these emails, right? So if they're not producing the right emails, the right quality, why would they use it, right? So that's one reason. What other reasons do you think? Matthew likes to use ChatGPT. Yeah. Mark uses it for his email. I don't want to review another document. Yeah, I get it. It's, okay, what are the main reasons? What are the main concerns that people have using AI? Number one, as you said, Mark, it's inaccuracy. So it can be related to your prompting, but if you don't get out of it what you think you're asking from it, and mind you, this is in the report from 23 and 24, but still, inaccuracy is by far the number one reason. And that's what we call like hallucination and where AI goes wild, right? The next item is cybersecurity. It's okay, if I use AI and I'm automating my systems, so that's like a next level, next step, right? Where we're integrating systems, are we providing like sensitive information to AI that might bite us at the end, right? So cybersecurity is next, and then IP infringement. If you got intellectual property and you share it with an LLM, what does a large language model do with it? Does it use it to learn? And therefore I expose my intellectual property to my competitors. Regulatory is another thing. If you need to be HIPAA compliant, you don't want to share patient data. Am I okay using a large language model to do that, right? There are personal and privacy reasons and etc. But those are the main items why people are like shying away from these elements. Okay, but still. I'll get to that, Mark. Keep that thought. So the main focus on hallucination, cybersecurity, IP governance, those are the risks that we are playing with. So how can we cover those risks, right? So how do we get those returns that leaders are getting, understanding that there is a true driver to results? Now, what we've noticed is that if you do the same thing with AI as you do currently, like you're writing an email, you use Copilot in an email to write your email, that's not really changing anything within the workflow. It's just you applying the current workflows that you have and trying to pull AI into that workflow. What we see is that if you really want to improve EBITDA or EBIT in this case, then you have to look at your workflows and say, okay, if I want to use AI, I have to redesign my workflow so that I get the results that I'd like to have. How do you do that? One of the main mindset shifts that you have to go through is that without AI, you're doing this yourself. You, as the human, are doing this yourself. So you're the doer, right? In an AI world, we're shifting from being the doer to actually being the reviewer. Now, there's a step in between because we have to instruct AI to do the work for us. And here's where prompting comes into play, right? If you do the right prompting, you may get the result that you expect. and then you review it, right? So the prompt is really the intellectual property that you're building. It's not the AI. AI facilitates it, but it's your prompt. Your question that you put to AI is really the intellectual property that you need to nurture. That is a core asset. So once you get the results back, the emails that you're asking for, Mark, and that if you improve your ask, your prompt, and you get more and more better results, that's what you're looking for, right? So you become more of a reviewer than you are a doer. So that's the big mindset shift. So if we look at these elements, like, okay, we can get better returns, but if we want to get better returns, we got to redesign our workflows. We got to shift our mindset from doing it ourselves to actually having this, what I call the intern, right? Instructed to give you the results so that you can be the reviewer rather than the doer. And then you want to fully utilize, at least utilize more of the tools that are at your fingertips, which most of you have, right? Whether it's Copilot, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude. And then deal with hallucinations and cybersecurity and IP elements. But start with doing those first parts. So what this requires is you need to have a strategy. You can't just go in and play with AI. Yes, you can, but you won't get the results. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. So that's what I've tried to do with the heavy book that you all get at the end of this training. So be prepared to share your shipping data, and I'll send the book in a physical form. So you can just go through the elements that I'm going to walk you through during this presentation. Who am I? I'm Danny de Vries. I've been using AI for about 2.5, 3 years now, and I'm the head of marketing at i.t.NOW. Is that relevant? Yes. AI has been mostly used within marketing first because there's not too much integration with systems, and you can use AI for a lot of marketing elements. Before that, I was an entrepreneur. So if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, I get where you're at, right? I've been a strategy and business coach for about 20 years. Before that, some of you may resonate. My background is in finance, and some of you on this call are probably in the finance area. When i.t.NOW looks for clients, we often speak to controllers and CFOs to implement IT managed service contracts. So I know where you're coming from when you're from the finance world. So as a finance guy, I want to see results. I want to see indicators that actually we are improving not only the use of AI, but also the return on AI. So this picture that you saw first was AI generated. This is the actual picture. It's getting close, but it's not as great yet. It's getting better, right? Okay, I'd like to teach in simple frameworks. So we keep it simple and then we dive deeper from there. So what I've designed is like what we call the ready system, which has 5 steps. First, the realign, then expose, then automate, defend, and then yield. Now, let me walk you through each of these steps. First of all, realign. And I had to have the acronym like ready. So I used realign, but it's basically align. You want to align your AI and data goals with your growth objectives. If you want to grow 10% per year, then how can AI contribute to that, right? So what you want as an outcome from your workflows that you design is that you want to have a clear and measurable AI roadmap with contributing financial performance. What does that mean? If I want to use AI to, like a workflow I've been working on for a client, which said, Danny, I'd like to look at a workflow. I've got my Amex statements, so credit card statements, and I need to get them in my bookkeeping system. Okay, great. How much time do you currently spend on that? About 2.5 hours per statement. Okay, so we've got 2.5 hours per statement. Where do you want to get it? It would be great if we can get that back to 15 minutes. Okay, then our target here, if we're looking at financial performance, is to get the hour spent from 2.5 to 15 minutes. 2.5 hours to 15 minutes, right? So that's the focus. That's the ROI that we want to get. And you can calculate what that means in terms of value, right? If you take a fully loaded cost of $70 per hour, you know, okay, this is what I'm going to save. So what's the wrong way of doing this? One, really putting vague goals in. I want to be more efficient. I want to respond quicker to tickets. That is, tickets for IT problems. Or I want to get more leads. Those are really vague and won't get you what you want, because at the end of the day, how much did I gain, right? So the right way to do this is to put clear KPIs. Reduce the financial close with 5 days, or cut customer response times by 30%, or increase qualified leads by 25%, right? Putting very clear goals and KPIs to what you want to achieve with AI, it drives you to take the right actions, right? That's the reason why this is step number 1. Step number 2 is, okay, if that is what we want to do, we want to expose the data and the workflow. We want to have a look at this. How do we do that today? So in my example of the credit card statement is, okay, I can have the statement, like a paper statement, or I can download the Excel file from the American Express website. So what are we going to use? Are we going to use the hard copies? Are we going to do digital? The next thing is that, where is my data housed? At this moment, it's in the American Express example, it's on their site, or it's like in the envelope on a piece of paper. Which one am I going to use? Where can I unlock the data that I need to do and need to have in order to put that in my accounting system? So we got to expose where that data lives and how we can use it with AI. So create full visibility of where your data is at, so that you can say, okay, if I want to use AI, like the next step, right? How do I design it in such a way that AI is most effective? Does that make sense, guys? If you've got a question, put it in the chat, or just open up the mic. We've got a small group, so that's fine. So questions you'd like to ask in this phase is, where is my data stored? Where can I access the required data so that I can design it or redesign it? Where do manual processes happen? Putting check marks when you've entered data, things like that, right? That would be the manual process. Can you access information combining paper documents to digital? That is your current process. If you're comfortable with that current process, how can AI help in doing that? Or do you need to redesign it to make the impact bigger? Where do mistakes often happen? On a manual process, it may be paper is harder to cyber hack. If you do a manual process, more mistakes happen. So there is a risk of mistakes if you do it manually. Which sensitive data do I need to protect? If you're in the HIPAA controlled environment, you don't want to share any data, any patient data, or expose any patient data. Are you at risk for additional intrusions? Exactly what Richard says. If I use paper, then they can't hack me. Will we have higher risk of prompt injections? That's a new thing. So if you use sophisticated AI automations, it may be that people go in and change what your automation actually does, obviously for bad purposes. So you got to know what really matters. Only then I suggest you look at, how can we automate things with AI, right? And you can use, if you have Microsoft 365, you can use that tool to actually get there. So there is where you can get the productivity lifts, the cost savings, and the improved employee output, but only then. How you can do that, again, there are examples in the books and in the addendums to have a look at that. I'll give you a couple of case studies after we've gone through these steps, so you can actually envisage a bit better, right? So for example here, a contract renewal monitoring example here. This is a property management company that we work with. Before, and these are contracts on the supplier side, okay? So this is a maintenance contract. This is someone that does the gardening, etc. So they have huge amount of properties. For every property, they have a contract or suppliers that help with that property. And before, they did this manual process, Richard. So it's like they looked periodically at their contracts whenever the time permit. They looked at folders where they had these contracts stored. Then they tracked, they have to open these contracts, look at the date, when does it renew, what are the terms of the contract, and then typically they were very reactive and noticed, oh, we've got an expired contract, we got to renew. So that's not an ideal situation. In an AI situation, the outcomes would be that the AI actually scans automatically the folders within SharePoint, looking for contracts that are supplier contracts, checking which dates are in the contract for when it needs to renew, and proactively send to the property manager is, okay, hey, property manager, in 90 days, this contract has to renew. It's probably time that you look at the terms of this contract and see what you can improve, right? So that's a proactive thing that AI can help you with. It can send you alerts through multiple channels, whether it's email, whether it's team, whether it's creating a calendar element in your calendar that notifies you, hey, now you have to have this discussion. And these summaries of where these contracts are at can be sent to property managers so that they can prioritize their actions. They can even review similar suppliers with different contract terms to say, hey, I can see here a property where this supplier is charging me X, and here's the other property that's charging me Y, right? So if I compare the thing, then I can probably renegotiate this contract on favorable terms. Obviously, that has savings, and that gives you direct bottom line impact. Yep. As Rachel says, if you use Power Automate, you can also have contracts have an approval step, right? Before the contract gets approved. So now I have to stress that AI is great, but you can never rely fully on AI. You always have to review. So you not being the doer means that you have to be the reviewer. You have to check, hey, is this the right quality? AI can make mistakes. You do have to change the way you do your work. You got to tackle hallucinations and the accuracy. So make sure that in your workflows, you always have a human in the loop. I haven't seen a system where you can fully rely on AI. Okay. Yes, you can hear on the news, everyone, is going to lose their jobs. No. My view is no one's going to lose their jobs. You're going to be more efficient, but your job is going to change, right? You're going to do more with AI, but you have to review it. It's your responsibility. Then it comes to the event. Now, AI is great, but your reputation risk is there, and that's probably more valuable, right? So you got to implement the rules where AI is restricted from accessing certain data, right? When it comes to governance, compliance, and security guardrails. You got to make sure that is something you implement before you open up your system to it, right? Makes sense. And that's where we as i.t.NOW jump in is, okay, great if you want to use AI, and we want to make sure that you get the return on that, but we want to make sure that you're also still compliant and secure, right? So what we've noticed that only 11% have both MFA everywhere, which is multi-factor authentication, and audit file permissions. Even our clients are still exposed. If they don't have, most of our clients, which we make mandatory, have MFA, but not all of our clients have strict file permissions. Okay, so make sure that your data is protected, your permissions are set, and that LLM has its guardrails. Okay, combat shadow AI. I don't know if you know what shadow AI is. It is very likely that your employees in your organization are already using AI. Okay, that means probably some data is already exposed to AI, and you want to, yeah, that's the question I'm answering, Richard. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. So in your systems, if you use Copilot, then you're protected. But if people go to Claude or ChatGPT, if they share information with those platforms, it may be at risk, right? Like sensitive data. I'm not saying that these companies are misusing your information, but they could, right? So as long as you are aware of that, you want to make sure that your employees know if you are using AI, then you can't use certain sensitive information with that. So make sure you've got those policies set. Again, you don't want to give the keys to the data kingdom to a new intern that doesn't know what to do with it, right? So My advice, don't do it. The last step is yield. Once you've planned what kind of return you want to have from a workflow automation, and you've set up your guardrails, you've set up your workflow, you've redesigned it, then you want to at least report to yourself or to your managers or to your shareholders what impact they have. It also allows you to do continuous improvement. If you don't see the improvement now, you can ask yourself, okay, what do we need to implement to get a better result from a certain process? And you can use applications. If you use Microsoft 365, applications like Power BI and Copilot to do your analytics and your return on investment. So use what you already own and have access to. I would not start going and buying new applications. Just use what you have. If you got a Microsoft, you can use Microsoft potentially with additional licenses that depends on how many people you want to give access to. Again, look at the result and the return on investment before you do that. Let me give you a couple of case studies of what we've seen over the last couple of months of what can be possible, right? So I've talked to you about this property management firm. Actually, Rachel, you're on the call. Managing, and these are probably more than that now, managing 160 properties with 7,500 active contracts. The old process took 15 minutes to get a contract, right? That means a lot of hours wasted. In addition to the active contracts, additional properties were added every month, about 50 to 150. And there was no real systematic renewal tracking in place, at least not at that time. When we proposed an automation, we could show, hey, if you do this right, you can reduce the search times from 15 minutes to 30 seconds. If you unlock all the data, so these contracts were housed in a SharePoint and folders, to have AI access to it, it can scan all of these contracts and see, okay, what are the terms? And we can put that in a central database. We can use your existing systems, your Microsoft 365 systems, so you don't have to have an additional investment. And we got to make sure that when we do that, we make sure it stays within a certain environment with the right permissions, protection, and guardrails. And then the yield obviously is very obvious. The yield here is from 15 minutes to 30 seconds. That's a 90% time reduction. And that would equate to an annual value of like $85,000, a return on investment over a period of 3 years of at least 500%. And you're already AI ready when you use these steps. So you'll have measurable results. Your risk will be managed. You're using your current systems, and it's strategically aligned because, hey, whenever you got a new contract or new properties, scaling this is going to be less of a hassle. So that's a property manager. The challenge that they have is we had a lot of large and many documents that they need to scan. They had a lot of double data entry and scattered case files. So if you have an unemployment case, there's a lot of information that you need to gather. What are the transcripts there? What are the meeting notes? What are the emails that were sent, etc. So there was a lot of files that they need to have access to bring to a case, right? A legal case. So access to that information, especially when someone is at the court and trying to defend the case, they need to have access very rapidly. So we said, okay, so the handling time we want to reduce by at least 50 to 70%. We want to deal with, in the expose phase, we want to deal with this unstructured documentation that you currently have with decentralized data. Data is housed everywhere. If you want to give AI access to that, you want to make sure that you organize that. And then only then you want to implement the AI, which we did, so that it had easy access with a chat model. So, okay, I want to look at this case number or this person's case and give me the information I need in order to help my legal case. Leverage the Microsoft ecosystem that they already had. And then as a yield is obviously having access to that information very rapidly when the time needed. So the key project results here is eliminating double entry, instant data access, and full reports just in minutes rather than hours that they had to spend before. Here's an i.t.NOW story, what we've done ourselves. again, for another type of case, what we notice is that, and this is from a marketing point of view, that i.t.NOW's website was not showing in AI overviews. If you go to Google, you currently have AI mode. And on the top, it says, okay, you're looking for cybersecurity. Probably put a question in there. Who is answering that question the best way? We saw that i.t.NOW was not ranked at all there. So we said, okay, how can we improve that? How can we use AI to answer these questions in the best possible way? So we saw, okay, we want to get ranked in AI overviews. What was the gap? What's the exposure here? We got to optimize our website, right? So that Google sees that we actually answer those questions. Then on the automation side, we actually automated the page creation and kind of the technical elements that Google is looking for, which is called schema markup. So that was already embedded in this automation and creating these pages. We obviously protected that from prompt injection because we don't want that people go into our website and create anything that is something that we don't want to have there. And the yield is we wanted to get at least 25% more visibility. The result at the end of the day was we're currently in 41% of the cases are now shown in AI overviews. We've already seen that the leads are increasing, and that has, if we calculate that, at least 100K plus annual revenue impact recurring. So you can actually see what the result is of that AI automation implementation. 3 examples here where you can see, okay, we've got a project, we can do something with it. We can probably improve whether it is efficiency, reduction of cost, or improvement of revenue, right? So all these 3 pillars is something that you want to look at. What did we learn from using this? And you want to start with one, is if you want to start doing something, we noticed that it's best to start with a simple workflow, okay? Don't go to a workflow that's very complicated, that has a lot of integrations that you need to set up, because you're still in the learning phase. You're still learning what can AI do. Once you do a simple workflow, you get to understand better what it can provide you, right? So always start with something simple and then make it more complicated down the road. When you identify workflows, make sure you identify those workflows that really move the needle, because then people get excited. For example, this controller that is, hey, I want to have these credit card processes. I want to have that simplified because it takes a lot of my time. That's a high impact work, right? So look at what brings you either dollars or more efficiency or less cost. Make sure you look at the workflow and potentially redesign the workflow. If you're using paper still, it may make sense to use digital assets and digital structures in order to open it up for AI and make that efficiency gain, right? Plan the road ahead and then establish the guardrails. Now, this is the case that I was talking about. I just finished that workflow and that automation is, okay, the challenge was I need to do these Amex statements and I need to enter these into my accounting system. It's a whole manual process. I want to automate this. The pain is I'm spending like 2 to 3 hours per card per monthly statement. That's a lot of time, right? It's a manual transaction and therefore prone to errors, right? The time per statement was 2.5 hours. Annual waste per credit card was 30, right? Depending on how many credit cards you have, you can calculate how much savings that would have. Using the already framework, we're trying to reduce the search and gain clarity and get this process done into the accounting system. Can you add an integration where the CSV file that is created by this automation is automatically uploaded to the accounting system? Yes. But here is where I'm saying, keep it simple first. Make sure that you're completely relying and can rely on what the AI system does before you build in more automations, right? So keep it simple first. He had multiple choices that he had. He had a CSV file that he could download from the American Express. He had an Excel file that he could download, and he had obviously the paper, right? We chose to go with the Excel file. Why? It exposed more information than the CSV file when downloading it from the American Express website. Okay, if it has more data, and therefore we can make the AI more intelligent, and therefore classify a certain transaction according to the right accounting account and the label, then we should use that. So that's where the expose come in. Then there's an automation, and I'll show you in the next slide what that kind of looks like. And then we make sure that there's not a lot of file permission that we had to focus on because it's all inside their own system. And the guardrails were not touching sensitive information. So that makes it easy. That makes it simple. Again, if you want to start with a workflow, use a workflow that is simple in that respect. And then the yield, that was obvious, right? So it's a lot of time that is saved. What does this automation look like? What you can see here, the first step in that automation is obviously we need to upload an American Express file. Here is where we use the Excel file that is downloaded. So we upload it to the system. We make sure that the system knows which accounts are available and which vendors are available so that it can actually match the transactions of this American Express statement with the right account and with the right vendors. And then the next step is to create that CSV file that need to go into the accounting system. And again, in this automation, we haven't chosen to upload that into the accounting system yet, because we want to keep the manual process, the human in the loop, applied for now, right? We want to make sure that this is working spotless before we start doing that. So the next step here was reporting. We've got an AI agent that actually takes all the information from the previous steps and puts it in an email to this controller and say, hey, we just processed your statement. Your total statement was 41,000, I think that's here. We were able to match like 93%, right? Now, what we see is that AI is already used. Again, that's what we call shadow AI by your employees. So you got to act. You got to be in front of the crowd and say, okay, this is what we're going to use it for. If you do, and again, this is just a statement, your employees are 3 times faster adopting AI than you are as an executive of your company. So if you want to battle that, you got to make sure that they can actually use it and use it wisely. So if you'd like to have some help, you can always scan the QR code that I'm going to show you in a minute. If you want help with this, we created a AI readiness questionnaire where you can go through a couple of questions and you can propose certain workflows that our system can analyze and say, okay, if these are the workflows that you would want to look at, what would the roadmap look like if you apply the ready system, right? So if you want to have help there, if you can just put me in the chat, that would be great. We'll make sure that you get that questionnaire. If you don't already get it from these slides, Richard, that's you. We definitely want to make sure that you have a look at that. Our principle is use a certain framework and use the system that you already have. We don't want you to additionally have to invest in other tools. You already have the tools. Very likely you already have these tools. So what we prepared for you is an AI readiness and growth blueprint. This is completely free. That means you will get like a complete report of how ready you are and what you can do with the workflows that you're currently considering. In addition to that, we'd like to give you a free discovery call. Okay, let's look at this report and let's see what is possible. If we can't help you, obviously we will tell you. The bonus element, because you guys are on this call, yes, Matthew, the recording will be available. It will be sent after this webinar. This is what we give free only for the people that are actually on a call. Then just put your delivery address, if you can put that in the chat. And again, immediate clarity, if you got your phone, just scan this QR code here or go to go.itnow.net/ready, where on the page, it directs you to the questionnaire. And then based on if you've filled it out, we can obviously help you after that with the steps that it is proposing that you do, right? So again, you'll get a full AI readiness roadmap as a document. It has all the 5 dimensions. It has specific automation opportunities with potential return on investment estimates. And again, the quality of your answers obviously determine how much we can provide you there. It provides you with potential security gaps that you may need to take immediate action on. before you start implementing AI. And it obviously gives you this implementation roadmap. It takes 20 minutes or so of your time to answer all the questions that you need to go through. After that, you can have a free discovery call. If you're already a client, you can talk to your account manager. If you're a prospect, you can talk to this handsome guy, this is Mike Harrington, and myself to have a discovery call. If you don't know where to start, make sure, if it's too much to do the questionnaire, just make sure you book a discovery call so that we can actually talk about what this could mean for you. So we can discuss a specific situation. If you want to do that, and again, this is also on the website. If you go to /ready, there's a link there that you can make an appointment with our specialist. Again, the bonus there is if you've put and I can see Richard, Matthew, and Rachel have put their addresses in. So I will make sure that this book gets to your address. It takes about 10 days. This is delivered by Amazon, but you get it for free just as a thank you for being on this webinar. Now, quote to end this training with, at least before we open it up for Q&A, supposing is good, but knowing is better. Get to use AI so that you better know what you're up against. And again, I've been a CFO when I left this company, Priority Telecom in the Netherlands, which was a Euronext listed company. They gave me this Delft blue plate. If you haven't noticed by my accent, I'm actually European from the Netherlands, so this is in Dutch. It says, trust is good, checking or control is better. In my role as a finance guy, obviously that was my statement all the time. Is okay, I can trust you, but I'd rather check if it's correct. And the same thing applies to AI. Always check, be the human in the loop in order to get those results. Guys, do you have any questions for me at this time?
Hey, Danny, I actually had some questions. So you've been working this for 2.5 years. I've done a little bit with Power Apps. We've got several things going in Power Apps with our team. But I'd like to know, as you've learned the different things you can do with the different AIs, we've got access to Copilot. We have just knowing which AI will do what would be very helpful at times. And I don't know if you have that kind of, how do we learn what AI is going to help us, or if what we already have is going to be able to do what we need to do, or how do we know which AI to use for each? I've done the Microsoft stuff. I'm learning. I've only had Copilot about a month. We've been doing the Power Automate and things with, especially Power Automate right now, and some things in SharePoint and approvals and all that kind of stuff. But just knowing what tools we have and to learn that I just like your experience on that and what you've learned.
Yeah, that's a very good question. My experience, Power Automate and the Microsoft application suite is very extensive. Again, is enterprise level. So it does depend on the size of your company, on what best to use in terms of system. When we looked at the dental lab that I showed you with the controller doing the American Express statements, this is a smaller company. Opening up all the Microsoft system to do that would be like, in my mind, too much. They don't need it because with the MS 365 system, there are costs. With Copilot, there is costs. And if you don't use like SharePoint, etc., then it may not make sense. If you do use, like in your case, you guys use the whole suite of Microsoft 365, it does make sense because then data is opened up for you that actually Copilot, in this case, can access. Copilot is like a version of ChatGPT, right? That's why Microsoft and ChatGPT agreed with each other to partner up. Quite recently, Microsoft also opened up to Claude, which is Anthropic. And there's a specific reason why they did that, because ChatGPT is very good at general things. But when it comes to coding and logic, Claude does a better job.
You spell that.
CLAUDE. So they've opened up the system to Claude as well, which is a large language model that is better versed at doing, I say coding, but logical things, right? Stepped approach. So there are different type of LLMs. Now Google is obviously coming up with Google Gemini 3.0. I think it's now the latest version. And every time ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, they try to be better than the other. So it's a race, because if an LLM is better than the other LLM, you can see that users are shifting to other platforms, other LLMs, etc. So they want to retain all of those users because that's value to them. But I can see that Claude is obviously for logical things better than ChatGPT or Copilot. This landscape changes every month. May Copilot be better in the future? Maybe, right? But there is where the difference is. There's also a difference in cost that you want to be mindful of. So when I look at an automation for a client or a prospect, it's okay. Looking at your workflow, it probably doesn't make sense to buy the Porsche because a Volvo is good enough to get you from A to B, right? So you have to test it. For example, this is a workflow in just one screen that I showed you in the presentation as well. Nothing really happens in these steps that require automation or a large language model. This is just more coding than it is intelligence. But here in this last step, there is an AI agent that is looking at data and creating an email with valuable information. Attached to this agent is a large language model, right? In this case, the large language model that is chosen here is OpenAI, and then a specific model of OpenAI. Can I choose different accounts here? Can I use Claude? Yes. Can I use Google Gemini? Yes. And then I can look at the output that it produces, what the quality of that output is. And again, this is the human in the loop. I want to make sure that the output that comes out of this AI agent is up to par, up to a certain quality criteria. Does that make sense? That's what I am always looking at when we use AI. What model do we use? And does that produce the output that we need? So that's just an example of, and I hope that answers your question. Any other questions, guys? If you have one, either put it in the chat or just open up your mic. We're kind of like an hour in. Make sure you do the questionnaire. Again, scan the QR code here or go to the website. You will get an email probably in half an hour with a summary of what we discussed. Okay. And the links as I showed you in this webinar. Okay. So you can always get to me or to Mike, and I'll make sure that the book gets to you in a physical form, and we can take it from there. If you've got questions, always reach out to me or to Mike, and we'd be happy to help. Thanks for attending, and make sure you watch the replay, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for